I get it. You're standing in the middle of a busy shop, eyeing that massive piece of equipment on the shelf, and the thought of spending a lot of money on something that might not actually solve your lifting problems is weighing on you. You've probably heard the term gantry crane tossed around and wonder if you really need the heavy-duty version or if a simple hoist will do. The fear of overpaying for a machine that ends up collecting dust is real, especially when you have to juggle floor space, safety compliance, and a budget that can't stretch forever. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down what the Vestil AHS 81514 actually brings to the table. It's a 15 by 14 foot steel frame that can lift up to 8,000 pounds, and the height is adjustable with a fork truck or any overhead lifting device you already have. The frame itself is welded steel, which means you won't be dealing with bolted joints that can loosen over time. The 4 phenolic casters lock in place on all 4 wheels, so once you've positioned the crane, it stays put until you decide to move it. Those casters are designed for smooth rolling on concrete, and the lock-in feature eliminates the little wobble you sometimes get with cheaper wheels. Now, who really benefits from a machine like this? If you run a small to mid-size fabrication shop, a warehouse that regularly moves heavy pallets, or a maintenance department that has to lift engines, gearboxes, or large assemblies, the adjustable height and 8,000-pound capacity are game changers. Imagine you need to replace a motor that sits 3 feet off the ground on a concrete pad. With this crane, you can raise the bridge to match the motor height, roll it right over the component, lock the casters, and lower the load safely. That kind of precision makes a difference when you're trying to avoid strain injuries or damage to the part you're working on. On the flip side, if you only lift a few hundred pounds a week, or you have a very tight aisle where a 15-foot span won't even fit, this crane becomes overkill. The same shop that needs a simple 2,000-pound floor jack might find the initial cost, the space requirement, and the need for a forklift to adjust the height more burdensome than helpful. In those cases, a fixed-height mini gantry or a mobile hoist would be more economical and easier to store when not in use. Let's talk about the real-world setup. When the box arrives, you'll have the steel frame, the 4 casters, and the mounting hardware. Assembly isn't a weekend project, but it's straightforward if you have a basic wrench set and a level. The biggest hidden step is the height adjustment. Since you need a fork truck or a similar lifting device to raise the bridge, you have to factor in that extra equipment cost if you don't already own one. Once the height is set, the casters lock with a simple turn of a lever, and the crane can support a full 8,000 pounds without sagging. I've seen shops that use the crane daily for loading heavy steel plates onto a downstream press. The bridge stays rocksteady, and the plates slide onto the press without the need for additional supports. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is the compliance with CMAA and ANSI standards. For shops that have to pass safety audits, having equipment that already meets those guidelines saves you paperwork and the headache of retrofitting safety features later. The phenolic casters also resist oil and chemicals, which is a plus in environments where lubricants are on the floor. Because the casters lock in 4 directions, you can position the crane at an angle and still prevent it from drifting, useful when you're working around obstacles like columns or machinery. However, there are a couple of practical weaknesses to keep in mind. The first is the weight of the crane itself. At full extension, the steel frame can weigh close to a ton, so moving it from one part of the shop to another without a forklift is a chore. You'll need to plan where you'll keep it permanently, because constantly relocating it defeats the purpose of having a mobile crane. The second is the clearance under the bridge. While the height is adjustable, the lowest setting still leaves a gap that can be problematic if you're trying to lift very low-profile loads. Some users have reported having to use a short piece of pipe as a shim to get the bridge close enough to a low pallet. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something you'll have to work around. If you're still on the fence, think about the cost per use. An 8,000-pound capacity crane that you'll run 10 times a week for the next 5 years ends up being a fraction of the cost of a damaged forklift or a worker injury. The real value shows up in the time saved. No more rigging a makeshift lift with chains and pallets, no more guessing whether the load will hold. The crane gives you a repeatable, safe method.